Hello, dear friends, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we're venturing into a story that reminds us that heartbreak doesn't always announce itself with a bang, but often creeps in quietly, revealing devastating truths when we least expect them. Join us as we explore a tale of love, betrayal, entitlement, and the surprising turns life can take on the road to healing. Let's begin. Sometimes the worst kind of heartbreak isn't sudden. It's the slow, stunning realization that the life you trusted, the future you envisioned, has quietly unraveled behind your back, leaving you standing in the ruins. In a quiet suburban neighborhood just outside San Diego, a woman named Olivia walked numbly into the lavish foyer of an upscale hotel suite. Sweat beaded on her forehead, not from the warm Southern California heat, but from the painful, icy shock gripping her soul. She was 7 months pregnant, her body already strained by the precious life growing within her. Yet tonight, instead of celebrating the anticipated miracle of new beginnings, she would bear witness to an unthinkable betrayal. Across the opulent room stood her husband, Ethan, a single perfect rose in hand, gazing adoringly into the eyes of another woman. In that single, shattering moment, Olivia realized her world, the one she had so carefully built, was about to shatter forever. Olivia had grown up in a modest, loving home on the outskirts of San Diego. Her parents, a teacher and a mechanic, taught her the enduring value of hard work, empathy, and resilience above all else. As the eldest of 3 children, she often took on the role of caregiver for her younger siblings from an early age, learning responsibility long before her peers. Olivia believed that love was sacred, a profound lesson instilled by her mother, who always said true devotion meant being there for someone through life's most painful trials, not just the easy celebrations. She carried this deeply ingrained idealism into her adult relationships, searching earnestly for a partner who would share both life's burdens and its joys with unwavering sincerity. Ethan, by stark contrast, was the product of an entirely different world. He was born into a family of significant wealth and established social status. An only child, Ethan never lacked for material comforts or opportunities. His parents, ambitious entrepreneurs who owned several successful luxury car dealerships across the state, ensured he had the best education and upbringing money could possibly buy. In high school, his friends jokingly called him the Prince, and although he often shrugged off the nickname with feigned modesty, a part of him secretly reveled in the attention and deference it brought. When he went on to attend a prestigious private college on the East Coast, he carried that ingrained sense of entitlement with him, firmly believing that most things in life, including people, were his for the taking. Their paths converged one fortuitous evening at a glamorous charity event benefiting City Children's Hospital's pediatric unit. Olivia, passionate about the cause, had volunteered countless hours to help organize the raffle. She was busy handing out tickets at a small booth near the entrance when Ethan strutted in, impeccably dressed in a tailored navy suit and exuding an aura of effortless confidence. For a moment, she was undeniably struck by his polished demeanor and the easy, practiced charm with which he greeted everyone he passed. He noticed her, too, amidst the glittering crowd. Her quiet warmth stood out. He noted her kind eyes, the subtle curls of her dark hair framing her intelligent face. In a genuine way, she lit up when talking about the hospital's charitable causes. Intrigued by her lack of pretense, Ethan approached her booth, introduced himself smoothly, and asked a few insightful questions about the hospital's fundraising goals. As the night wore on, he found himself increasingly drawn to Olivia's genuine concern for others. She wasn't dazzled or overly impressed by his wealth or family background, a rarity in his circles. Instead, she engaged him in a deep, thoughtful conversation about healthcare reforms, the pressing needs of underprivileged children in their community, and how everyday citizens could foster real, tangible change, while others lingered near him, clearly hoping to impress or gain favor. Olivia challenged his views respectfully, questioned his easy assumptions, and spoke with a quiet conviction that disarmed him completely. When Ethan, falling back on old habits, offered to buy more raffle tickets than anyone else in the room, Olivia laughed softly, a sound both gentle and firm. She told him kindly to save his money for future charitable ventures and not to treat genuine giving as some sort of competitive game to be won. That laugh, and her gentle rebuke, cut through the noise and superficiality of the event and left an unexpected imprint on his pride. It kindled a fire within him. He realized she was unlike any woman he had ever met, grounded, sincere, and completely uninterested in superficial gestures or displays of wealth. He watched her from across the room more than once that night, noticing how her quiet presence drew people in, not with status or glamour, but with palpable sincerity. By the time the event ended, he was determined not to let her slip away. He asked for her phone number in the most polite, almost humble manner he could muster. And Olivia, who felt an undeniable spark, a connection she couldn't quite explain, graciously gave it to him. Their courtship was fast, but felt incredibly intense. Ethan showered Olivia with thoughtful, personalized gifts. But more importantly, he also showed genuine, sustained interest in her world. He visited her small, cozy apartment, met her siblings without judgment, and even helped her mother carry heavy bags of groceries, a task utterly foreign to his privileged upbringing. Each such gesture, once entirely alien to him, began to subtly reshape his understanding of true connection. Olivia, in turn, offered him a quiet refuge from the high-pressure demands and expectations of his family's sprawling empire. She would listen patiently, without interruption, as he vented about stressful corporate meetings or demanding clients, gently reminding him of the things that truly mattered in life: love, connection, empathy, and shared moments. They would sit together on her worn-out couch late into the night, her head resting comfortably on his shoulder. And for the first time in his life, Ethan felt genuinely seen for who he was, rather than merely admired for what he represented. Just 4 months into their whirlwind dating, Ethan proposed beneath the iconic span of the Bayview Bridge, overlooking the glittering expanse of the San Diego Bay at sunset. Olivia was stunned. They'd known each other for such a relatively short time, but she felt deeply in her heart that their bond was real, substantial, and meaningful, with tears of joy streaming down her face, blurring the beautiful view. She said yes. The swirl of excitement carried them through an elegant, lavish ceremony at the Grand Vista Resort, where Ethan's parents spared absolutely no expense. Olivia's family stood proudly by her side, their simple sincerity a quiet counterpoint to the opulent surroundings. For a moment, it all seemed exactly like a fairy tale come miraculously to life. Yet, even then, underneath the polished, perfect veneer of their new marriage, faint red flags waved almost imperceptibly in the distance. Ethan's temper would occasionally flare when things didn't go precisely his way, and he possessed an unsettling tendency to treat his successes, and by extension, his marriage, to the beautiful and kind Olivia as trophies that proved his inherent worth to the world. Olivia, ever the optimist and deeply in love, dismissed these troubling warning signs. She believed wholeheartedly in the sacred vows they had exchanged to love, honor, and cherish each other, in good times and bad. In her mind, these small imperfections were merely bumps in the road, minor flaws that love, patience, and mutual respect could eventually smooth over. She reminded herself often of the man who once held her hand with genuine wonder, not entitlement, and desperately hoped that version of him still lived somewhere deep inside. For a time, it did seem like their union was an unbreakable fortress against the world. Their families became gradually interwoven, and Olivia grew surprisingly close to Ethan's parents, Robert and Evelyn, who began to see her as the grounding, positive influence their often impetuous son desperately needed. She was welcomed, albeit sometimes awkwardly, into San Diego's high society gatherings, slowly adjusting to the exclusive circles Ethan had long navigated with ease. It wasn't the lifestyle she had ever imagined for herself, but she embraced it willingly because it came with him her husband, her love, and the man she hoped would be the father of her future children. And though she couldn't yet envision how drastically, how painfully, life would soon change, she held on tightly to the hope that love would ultimately guide them both through whatever challenges lay ahead. In the early months of their marriage, Olivia truly believed she had found her forever partner, her soulmate. Even when she occasionally witnessed Ethan's sharp impatience with waitstaff at upscale restaurants, or to the condescending way he would sometimes scold his subordinates at the family business, she tried to rationalize it. She convinced herself that his stress levels were simply too high, that the pressure was getting to him. She assumed his short temper was merely a product of the immense responsibility he felt now that he was being actively groomed by his father to expand the brand of luxury dealerships nationwide. Still, a tiny, persistent voice in the back of her mind whispered that something wasn't quite right. She noticed the first real, undeniable sign when Ethan began coming home far later than usual from work, often missing dinner altogether. Previously, if a crucial business meeting or unforeseen emergency demanded his attention late into the evening, he'd always call or text, let her know he might be late. But in those recent weeks, he sometimes didn't even bother to inform her, slipping quietly through the front door near midnight with vague, unsatisfactory excuses about last-minute deals, closing late, or dinner meetings with potential investors that ran much longer than expected. Olivia tried her best to be understanding, attributing it to his ambition. But each time she gently asked for more details, Ethan would become evasive, quickly changing the subject or brushing off her concerns with a dismissive wave of his hand. Worse yet, Ethan's phone suddenly became completely off limits. Olivia had never been the type to snoop through her partner's personal devices. She believed wholeheartedly in respecting boundaries and privacy within a relationship. But his behavior shifted dramatically from casually leaving his phone lying around the house to clutching it constantly, as if it were a precious, top-secret relic. He habitually placed it face down on counters and nightstands and took it with him even when he showered. One evening, as they were preparing for bed, his phone buzzed with an incoming text. Olivia jokingly asked who it could be at that late hour, and the look he gave her, cold, sharp, instantly guarded, sent an unexpected chill right through her body. He mumbled something unintelligible about work stuff and quickly walked away, leaving her standing there feeling puzzled and vaguely uneasy. The changes in Ethan didn't stop there. For years, throughout their courtship and early marriage, he had always been affectionate and enthusiastic about their physical closeness. Suddenly, inexplicably, his passion waned significantly. He began avoiding nighttime intimacy, frequently claiming utter exhaustion from his demanding job. Olivia tried different approaches, hoping to reignite the spark, planning a romantic candlelit dinner at home, surprising him with small, thoughtful gifts, suggesting relaxing weekend getaways to nearby vineyards. Each effort was met with lukewarm acceptance at best, or outright rejection at worst, when she gently but directly confronted him about her worries, expressing her feeling of disconnect. He dismissed it all as paranoia fueled by pregnancy hormones, though she wasn't pregnant yet. He patted her arm condescendingly and said, "I love you, Olivia. You're just overthinking things," before promptly shifting the conversation to something mundane, like the stock market or his golf game. Olivia's simmering suspicions escalated sharply when they attended a lavish gala in support of the San Diego Children's Foundation. Ethan spent most of the evening stationed at the far end of the grand ballroom, purportedly mingling with important business associates. Olivia, largely left to her own devices, floated among acquaintances, making polite, surface-level chatter. During one of these conversations, she spotted Ethan near the overflowing champagne fountain talking animatedly to a statuesque blonde woman in a shimmering, eye-catching red gown. Their body language seemed electric, charged with an energy that felt inappropriate. The woman was leaning in very close, placing a familiar hand lightly on Ethan's forearm. He didn't recoil or pull away. Instead, he let the contact linger in a way that felt undeniably intimate. Even from across the crowded room, Olivia could sense a palpable undercurrent between them, something that went far beyond casual professional friendliness. Her heart pounded uncomfortably in her chest as she watched them share a quiet, conspiratorial laugh. Just as she mustered the courage to walk over and join them, Ethan seemed to sense her gaze upon him. He abruptly stepped back from the woman, adopting a more formal, businesslike pose. Olivia tried desperately to brush aside the tight, knot forming in her stomach, attributing the apparent closeness to the sometimes overly familiar nature of high society networking events. But doubt took firm root in her mind that night, a poisonous seed refusing to let go. Later, during the tense car ride home, Olivia hesitated for a long moment before finally asking, trying to keep her voice light, "Who was that woman in the red dress you were talking to for so long by the fountain?" Ethan glanced at her sideways, annoyance flashing briefly in his eyes before he forced a smooth, calm smile. "Oh, that was Chloe Vance," he replied casually, emphasizing the last name slightly, as if it should mean something significant to her. "She runs a very successful marketing firm. My father wants our company to collaborate with her on the national expansion. Just a business discussion." "Olivia." "Yes, you. Nothing more." His words felt rehearsed, too smooth, as though he had anticipated her question and prepared his answer in advance. That night, Olivia lay awake long after Ethan had fallen asleep beside her, staring blankly at the ceiling, unable to quell the uneasy, nauseous churning in her gut. In the days and weeks that followed, she noticed that Chloe Vance's name popped up with increasing, alarming frequency. Ethan mentioned a crucial lunch meeting with her at a trendy, new high-end steakhouse downtown. Then, he supposedly had to attend an urgent, late-night pitch presentation at her sleek corporate office. Although none of these individual occurrences proved anything definitively, they collectively, relentlessly chipped away at Olivia's fragile sense of security. Every new mention, every late night attributed to Chloe, felt like another piece falling into place in a devastating puzzle she desperately didn't want to complete. Soon after, a completely unexpected medical surprise threw yet another wrench into Olivia's already fragile emotional state. At her annual checkup, ironically scheduled months before she and Ethan had planned to actively start trying for a family, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. A whirlwind of conflicting emotions assaulted her instantly. She was undeniably thrilled, overjoyed even, because motherhood had always been a deeply cherished dream. But the timing seemed precarious, almost cruel. Her marriage was clearly on uncertain, shaky ground, and Ethan's recent distant, secretive behavior left her deeply worried about how he would react to this life-altering news. She mulled over telling him immediately, wanting to share the miracle, but a quiet, paralyzing fear held her back. What if this pregnancy, instead of bringing them closer, Push him further away? Or worse, what if his reaction, or lack thereof, confirmed her worst, most terrifying suspicions that his love and loyalty had already wandered irretrievably elsewhere? Yet, Olivia's inherent optimism, her deep-seated belief in the good, eventually reasserted itself. She reasoned, perhaps desperately, that a baby might be exactly the catalyst needed to bring them closer again, to remind Ethan of the future they had once dreamed of together. After all, they had spoken so often, so lovingly, about raising a family, creating a legacy rooted not just in wealth, but in genuine love and generosity. Perhaps Ethan was simply overwhelmed by his demanding new responsibilities in the family business and the constant pressures of networking within San Diego's competitive corporate scene. She forced herself to remember the quiet nights they lay in bed together, whispering dreams of tiny footsteps echoing through their beautiful home. Surely, that man, the one who had looked at her with such adoration, was still somewhere inside him, buried beneath the stress and ambition. She needed, to believe that once he knew about the baby, everything would somehow snap back into place, like a precious painting that had been momentarily knocked askew, but only needed a gentle realignment to be made perfect once more. Hope is a powerful, often blinding thing. It can illuminate the darkest paths, but can also obscure the harsh truths we desperately don't want to see. Olivia clung fiercely to that hope, believing against mounting evidence that the secrets Ethan guarded so fiercely would somehow dissolve into blissful irrelevance once he heard the joyous news of their impending child. Little did she know, her profound discovery of pregnancy would soon collide with an even more shocking, more public revelation, one that would leave her heart utterly in tatters at the very moment she needed stability, reassurance, and unwavering love the most. Olivia agonized for days over how best to share the pregnancy news with Ethan. She planned a simple but heartfelt reveal, an intimate dinner at their favorite cozy Italian restaurant downtown, the table softly lit with flickering candles. Her plan was to surprise him over dessert by presenting him with a tiny, adorable pair of hand-knitted baby shoes she'd found at a local boutique. In her carefully constructed mental scenario, he would be overcome with joy, instantly elated, all the recent tension and distance forgotten in a shared moment of wonder. This dream scenario fueled her for days, giving her strength. She practiced how she would say the words in the mirror, imagining how her voice would tremble with pure joy, not gnawing fear. But the reality, when it finally arrived, was absolutely nothing like the hopeful fantasy she had conjured. On the evening she had carefully chosen for the announcement, Ethan didn't come home until nearly 11 p.m. He breezed carelessly through the door, looking disheveled, his clothes slightly rumpled, and reeking faintly of an expensive perfume that definitely wasn't Olivia's signature scent. Work ran late. He mumbled by way of greeting, tossing his expensive jacket dismissively onto the back of the couch. Olivia, who had waited anxiously for hours, pacing the living room, felt hot tears prick the corners of her eyes. The specially prepared pasta had gone cold hours ago. The tiramisu she'd made from scratch remained untouched in the refrigerator. She had relit the romantic candles twice, each time hoping desperately that the next sound at the door would be him, returning with apologies and affection. She had spent the entire afternoon cooking his favorite dishes, carefully plating them on their best china, setting the dining room table with linen napkins and flowers, only for him to completely ignore the loving spread upon his eventual arrival. The candles had long since burned down to messy puddles of wax, and the tiny baby shoes remained tucked away, hidden in her coat pocket, a precious secret still unspoken, its joyous potential fading with every passing moment of his indifference. Summoning every ounce of her remaining courage, she gently reached out and took his hand as he headed towards the bedroom. "Ethan," she began, her voice soft but determined. "I have something really important, something wonderful, to tell you." He pulled away abruptly from her touch, irritably massaging his temples as though a fierce headache pounded behind his eyes. "Olivia, really? Can it wait? I'm absolutely exhausted," he muttered dismissively, not even looking at her. Her heart clenched painfully in her chest. She had hoped for warmth, for engagement, for even a tiny spark of enthusiasm, anything to suggest he still cared, that they still mattered. Just one brief moment of genuine, shared joy. One fleeting second of shared awe at the miracle they had created. But all she received was his cold, impenetrable distance. In the heavy, suffocating silence that followed, Olivia couldn't hold back any longer. She retrieved the tiny baby shoes from her pocket and held them out towards him, her fingers trembling uncontrollably. "I'm pregnant, Ethan," she whispered, her voice quivering with a tumultuous combination of hesitant joy and overwhelming fear. "We're going to have a baby." He stared blankly at the tiny shoes, as though they were completely foreign objects he couldn't comprehend. His eyes flickered with something unreadable surprise. Perhaps, or maybe even annoyance before he forced a faint, unconvincing smile onto his lips. "Wow," he said softly, the word utterly devoid of emotion. "Okay." There was no genuine excitement, no warmth in his voice. He leaned in stiffly to kiss her forehead in what felt like a completely perfunctory, almost obligatory gesture. That's good news. Olivia. Really?" Her breath hitched painfully in her throat. That was it. No embrace. No excited questions. No shared tears of joy. Just good news. A strangled mixture of profound relief that she had finally told him and crushing disappointment flooded her senses. She had yearned for so much more than this subdued, almost indifferent response. Exhausted and emotionally drained, she tried desperately to convince herself that maybe he was simply too worn out, too stressed from work, to process the momentous news properly right then. Over the next few days, however, his behavior didn't improve. In fact, if anything, it worsened. He spent even more time away from home, claiming unexpected work emergencies at all hours of the day and night. One Friday afternoon, Olivia received an unexpected call from Ethan's mother, Evelyn. They had always maintained warm, if somewhat formal, terms. Evelyn was a formidable woman, confident, sharp-witted, and deeply invested in her son's life and the family's reputation. She congratulated Olivia on the pregnancy, her tone practiced and polite, though perhaps lacking genuine warmth. Then, she mentioned something casually that made Olivia's stomach lurch violently. "I just hope everything works out for you two, dear," Evelyn said, her voice lowering slightly. "I know Ethan's been terribly busy with that new marketing collaboration. I've heard he's been working very closely with Chloe Vance lately. Perhaps too closely, if the rumors are to be believed. There's talk, Olivia, more than just whispers, suggesting there's something more going on there than just strategy meetings and advertising campaigns." Hanging up the phone, her hand trembling, Olivia felt a deep, icy chill seep into her very bones. Rumors. Whispers confirmed by her own mother-in-law. She wanted desperately to ignore them, to dismiss them as malicious gossip. But the pieces were beginning to fit together with sickening clarity. The increasingly late nights, the secretive phone calls, the sudden, constant appearance of Chloe Vance in nearly every conversation about work. It all pointed relentlessly towards an affair. A wave of intense nausea, stronger than any morning sickness she'd experienced yet, took hold of her, and she rushed to the bathroom, retching violently, feeling as though her body was physically rejecting not just the food she tried to eat, but the very trust she had placed in her husband. Each heave felt like a painful expulsion of shattered faith. That same evening, summoning a strength she didn't know she possessed, Olivia mustered the courage to confront Ethan directly. When he finally came home, hours after dinner had once again gone cold and uneaten, she stood waiting for him in the center of the spacious living room, physically blocking his path towards the bedroom. "I need you to be honest with me, Ethan," she said, her voice unsteady but resolute. "Are you having an affair with Chloe Vance?" For a fleeting, almost imperceptible second, raw guilt flashed unmistakably in his eyes. Then, just as quickly, his face hardened into a mask of indignant outrage. "Are you serious? You're being ridiculous, Olivia," he snapped, his voice sharp with feigned offense. "Chloe is a professional contact. You know, my father has huge plans for the business expansion, and I have to work closely with top marketing experts like her. Why would you even ask such an insulting thing?" But Olivia refused to back down this time. She stood her ground, planting her feet firmly. "Because you're never home anymore, Ethan. Because your phone is suddenly hidden away like it contains state secrets. Because you come home smelling like someone else's expensive perfume. Because your own mother alluded to rumors," she countered, her voice trembling with a mixture of hurt and anger. She took a shaky, deep breath, tears finally glistening in her eyes, threatening to spill over. "Ethan, I'm pregnant. I'm carrying your child. If there's something going on, I deserve to know the truth." Now, Ethan's jaw tightened, and he let out a sharp, frustrated exhale. For a heart-stopping moment, Olivia thought he might finally break, that he might confess, and they could somehow figure out where to go from there. Instead, with cruel precision, he turned the tables completely. "You think being pregnant gives you the right to interrogate me like this?" He sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "Maybe if you weren't so stressed and paranoid all the time. You're overreacting, Olivia. I've told you repeatedly, it's just work." The raw anger, the utter lack of empathy or reassurance in his voice, cut through her more deeply than any physical blow could have. She saw not a trace of the man she had married, only a cold, defensive stranger. He brushed past her dismissively and strode angrily into the bedroom, leaving Olivia standing alone in the middle of the silent living room, hot tears finally rolling unchecked down her cheeks. The tiny baby shoes still clutched tightly in her hand. Over the next few weeks, the chasm between them widened into a yawning, unbridgeable gulf. Olivia silently wrestled with her growing certainty, noticing every subtle, damning detail. Ethan's phone buzzing insistently late at night. The hushed, furtive conversations he had whenever she briefly left the room. And the repeated, increasingly flimsy mentions of complex marketing plans that always seemed to require Chloe Vance's expert input, often after hours or on weekends. Olivia felt physically sick with worry for herself, for the precarious future of her marriage, and most profoundly, for the innocent life growing inside her. She still held onto a slim, desperate thread of hope that maybe, just maybe, she was somehow mistaken, or that if Ethan was straying, he might still confess, repent, and try to fix the damage he had wrought before it was too late. Then, one sunny Saturday afternoon, driven by a desperate need for certainty, Olivia made a decision she never imagined she'd resort to. She followed him. He had left their home dressed in casual attire, claiming he had to meet unexpectedly with an important out-of-town client for a quick coffee. Olivia got in her own car a few minutes later, heart pounding, adrenaline coursing like electricity through her veins. She trailed him carefully through the busy San Diego traffic, heading towards the trendy downtown waterfront district, trying desperately to stay inconspicuous several car lengths behind. She parked her car a short distance away on a side street and watched, her stomach twisting into knots, as he confidently entered a sleek, upscale condominium complex known for its luxury amenities and discreet clientele. About 15 minutes later, her worst fears were confirmed. She saw him step out onto a fifth-floor balcony, bathed in the afternoon sun, alongside Chloe Vance. Their body language was intimate, relaxed, utterly impossible to misread. He casually wrapped his arms around Chloe's waist from behind, drawing her close against him. She laughed, tilting her head back against his chest, her hand resting possessively over his heart. The sight hammered the final, brutal nail into the coffin of Olivia's dying hopes. She quickly snapped a few photos with her phone, tears blurring her vision so badly the images were likely unclear. Her heart pounding so hard she could feel the frantic rhythm in her ears. She felt an odd, disorienting mixture of crushing heartbreak, white-hot rage, and a strange, unexpected sense of relief. Heartbreak that her marriage, her dreams, were irrevocably crumbling before her eyes. Rage that he could betray her so blatantly, so callously, especially while she carried his child. And relief that she now had undeniable, irrefutable proof. No more agonizing second-guessing. No more clinging to flimsy illusions. The ugly truth was laid bare. Ethan was unfaithful, and Chloe Vance was undeniably the other woman. Olivia sped away from the curb, her mind reeling, choking sobs tearing through her throat, though she desperately wanted answers, explanations, perhaps even a confrontation right then and there. She couldn't bring herself to face him at that moment. Her heartbreak was too raw, too overwhelming. Later that evening, sitting alone in the quiet, heavy emptiness of their once happy home, she gazed numbly at the blurry photos on her phone, realizing with terrifying certainty that everything, absolutely everything, was about to change. Her life's very foundation was collapsing beneath her. But even in her despair, she told herself fiercely that she had to remain strong, if not for her own sake, then unequivocally for the innocent child growing inside her, depending solely on her. The next confrontation she had with Ethan would be definitive, final. There is absolutely no turning back now from the devastating revelations that would soon rock both their worlds to the core. Days passed in the house, filled with an uneasy, fragile calm. Olivia waited, biding her time, searching for the right moment, the right circumstances, to confront Ethan with the damning photographic evidence she possessed. She sensed he was on edge too, wary, as if he could feel the storm brewing beneath her unnerving silence. Then, one Thursday evening, he informed her casually, without a shred of apology or sensitivity in his tone, that he needed her to accompany him to an important business function being held at a private, sprawling estate on the outskirts of San Diego that weekend. It's crucial for networking. Olivia, appearance is everything, he'd added dismissively. The mere idea of walking into a room filled with their social circle, where Chloe Vance would almost certainly be present, made Olivia's stomach turn violently. But something in Ethan's tone felt different this time, forcibly insistent, almost vaguely threatening. Gathering every scrap of her courage, she agreed numbly, knowing deep down that she had her own plan forming. She wanted the truth laid bare, exposed. Perhaps, she reasoned, a confrontation in a public setting, surrounded by witnesses, would prevent Ethan from resorting to his usual tactics of gaslighting, deflection, or outright denial. The event was scheduled for Saturday night, giving Olivia a couple of agonizing days to steel herself mentally and emotionally for the inevitable showdown. Yet, even in her most cynical imaginings, she could never have predicted just how far Ethan would actually go to deliberately, publicly humiliate her. The estate was a grand, imposing mansion nestled in the rolling hills, owned by one of Ethan's influential business associates. Olivia arrived dutifully on his arm, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She wore a flowing emerald green gown she'd bought months ago, one that comfortably accommodated her now significant 7-month pregnancy bump. In the glittering, almost blinding lights of the chandeliered foyer, she spotted familiar, smiling faces from San Diego's elite high society, along with a cluster of younger, ambitious executives she didn't recognize. And then, inevitably, there was Chloe, radiant, triumphant, holding court near the bar in a slinky silver cocktail dress that clung provocatively to every curve. She was sipping champagne nonchalantly, her eyes immediately locking onto Ethan's across the crowded room, a predatory gleam within them. Olivia's pulse quickened with a surge of pure, unadulterated anger. At first, the evening proceeded as any formal, high society gathering might. Polite, surface-level conversation buzzed around them. A lavish buffet overflowed with gourmet delicacies, and soft instrumental music played unobtrusively in the background. But Olivia could sense something was off, subtly wrong. The energy in the room felt charged, electric with a strange anticipation, as if everyone else was privy to a secret she didn't yet know. She noticed how a few guests cast quick, sympathetic glances her way, then rapidly looked away, embarrassed. It felt as though the very ground was shifting beneath her feet. Even the usually attentive waitstaff seemed more subdued than usual, exchanging quick, meaningful glances that danced just out of her direct line of sight. Then, precisely at the stroke of 9, as if on cue, a sudden hush fell over the chattering crowd. Ethan stepped confidently to the center of the room, taking Chloe Vance's hand and drawing her possessively to his side. Olivia stood frozen at a distance, near the French doors leading to the terrace, her chest tightening painfully with each deliberate step he took towards a makeshift stage. Clutching a microphone, Ethan cleared his throat, the sound amplified through hidden speakers. "Could I have everyone's attention, please?" he began, his voice smooth and practiced. His eyes flickered towards Olivia for the briefest, almost imperceptible moment, but his expression remained carefully unreadable, chillingly blank. "As many of you know," he continued, his voice resonating with false sincerity, "I've been working tirelessly on expanding my family's business into new national markets. And in that endeavor, I've had the distinct privilege of collaborating closely with one of the brightest, most innovative marketing minds in the entire industry." He paused dramatically, turning to gaze down at Chloe with a look of exaggerated fondness that made Olivia's stomach lurch violently. The room seemed to tilt precariously, the brilliant chandelier lights blurring into streaks as hot tears welled uncontrollably in her eyes. "Chloe Vance," Ethan announced grandly, "has not only brought groundbreaking strategies and unparalleled vision to the table, but she is also," he paused again for maximum effect, "become someone I cherish deeply, on a very personal level." A ripple of shocked whispers ran through the previously silent crowd. But still, no one stepped forward, no one spoke out to stop the unfolding travesty. Olivia stood rooted to the spot, sheer shock freezing her movements, making her limbs feel heavy as lead. Her heart hammered so fiercely against her ribs, she wondered vaguely if she might actually faint. She reached out blindly for the back of a nearby velvet armchair, steadying herself with trembling fingers. Then, to her absolute horror, Ethan retrieved a small, familiar-looking velvet box from his inner jacket pocket and, with practiced flair, knelt down smoothly on one knee directly in front of Chloe Vance. "Chloe," he said, his amplified voice reverberating through the stunned, cavernous silence, "will you do me the incredible honor of becoming my wife?" For a terrifying moment, Olivia couldn't breathe. Her chest constricted painfully, as though invisible iron bands were tightening relentlessly around her ribs. She was witnessing her husband, the father of her unborn child, publicly, brazenly proposing marriage to another woman, right in front of her, in front of everyone they knew. Guests gasped audibly now, a flurry of shocked exclamations finally filling the tense air. Chloe lifted a perfectly manicured hand to her mouth in a theatrical, almost comical display of feigned surprise, pretending a moment of coy indecision before exclaiming loudly, dramatically, "Oh, Ethan, yes, yes, of course, I'll marry you." The crowd erupted into applause then, a strange mixture of genuine enthusiasm from some and uncomfortable obligation from others. Olivia spotted one older woman in the back, shaking her head slowly in disbelief, her hand covering her mouth in horror. Olivia felt hot tears scorching trails down her cheeks, but she was fiercely determined not to crumble, not to give him the satisfaction of seeing her break completely. The baby inside her womb kicked suddenly, sharply, as if sensing the violent turmoil raging through her mother. For a split second, Olivia thought she might actually collapse under the crushing weight of the devastation. But then, a fierce, protective anger welled up from the depths of her soul, holding her upright, lending her an unexpected strength. She forced her way through the stunned crowd, which parted for her automatically like a bow wave slicing through a turbulent sea. Ethan and Chloe turned to face her as she approached, their triumphant expressions instantly shifting to something akin to alarm, perhaps even fear. Before either of them could utter a word, Olivia raised her voice, her words clear and slicing through the suddenly hushed throng. "Ethan," she began, her tone trembling but infused with a potent mix of righteous rage and unbearable heartbreak. "What in God's name do you think you're doing? I am your wife. I am standing right here, carrying your child. How dare you? How dare you propose to another woman? To her, right here in front of me?" A deathly hush fell once more over the assembled guests. People exchanged wide-eyed glances, their faces reflecting a confusing mix of horror, pity, and, in some cases, morbid, undeniable curiosity. Ethan stood up slowly, his demeanor shifting instantly to cold, callous defensiveness. "We're over, Olivia," he said flatly, his voice devoid of any emotion. "You just refuse to accept it. Chloe and I are moving forward with our life together. I needed to make it official tonight. Everyone here deserves to know the truth." Chloe slipped her arm possessively around Ethan's waist, flashing her newly acquired, ostentatious engagement ring under the bright chandelier light. Olivia could only stare, feeling as though the entire world had spun violently off its axis. Her breath hitched, her legs felt weak and shaky beneath her, but pure, unadulterated fury kept her standing tall. "You coward," she whispered, her voice cracking despite her efforts to remain strong. "You couldn't even tell me to my face. You had to drag me here, pregnant, to humiliate me in front of all these people?" Ethan merely shrugged, a chillingly hollow arrogance glinting in his eyes. "I don't owe you anything anymore." He spat venomously. "Sign the divorce papers when they're served. Just stop clinging to something that's been dead for a long time." Gasps rippled audibly through the horrified crowd. But still, no one dared to intervene, to speak up for her. Olivia's fists clenched tightly at her sides, her nails digging into her palms. The deep ache in her chest turned sharp, visceral, as if the betrayal were a physical blade being freshly plunged into her heart. In that horrifying moment, Olivia realized the true, staggering scale of his cruelty. He wanted not just to discard her, but to utterly break her spirit in the process, to grind her down publicly. Yet, somehow, miraculously, she found a tiny, resilient spark of strength flickering in the deepest depths of her despair. Lifting her chin high, she took a long, steadying breath. "I will never forget this night. Ethan," she murmured, her voice low but carrying a solemn, unwavering promise. "One day, you'll look back on this disgusting spectacle and realize what you truly lost. And I promise you, I won't be there to hear your apology." She swept her gaze over him and Chloe with cold disdain. "You've both shown your true colors to the entire world tonight. I sincerely hope you get exactly what you deserve." With that, Olivia turned sharply on her heel and walked steadily towards the exit, tears streaming freely down her face now, but her head held high. The crowd parted silently before her, some guests reaching out tentatively to touch her shoulder in a futile, inadequate show of consolation. The heavy oak doors slammed shut behind her, echoing the finality of the moment, and her world felt irrevocably, terrifyingly changed as she climbed numbly into a waiting taxi she'd summoned. Her phone buzzed incessantly with calls and texts from concerned friends and curious onlookers. She ignored them all, sinking back against the seat, utterly depleted. Olivia knew, with absolute certainty, that she was at the lowest point of her entire life. She placed a protective hand instinctively over her belly, feeling the gentle reassurance of the life within. She might have lost a husband, a future she believed in, but she still had a child to protect, to fight for, and perhaps, just perhaps, in the future, a quiet reckoning to deliver. In the days following that disastrous, soul-crushing night at the estate, Olivia's grief was all-consuming. A heavy, suffocating blanket she couldn't escape. She locked herself inside the master bedroom of the home. They had shared the same space where she and Ethan had once whispered intimate dreams about their future family. Now, it felt haunted, poisoned by the specter of broken promises and cruel betrayal. She curled up fetal on the large, empty bed, the duvet pulled tightly up to her chin, replaying Ethan's public proposal to Chloe over and over again in her mind like a sickening, relentless loop she couldn't shut off. Her phone continued to buzz constantly with calls from concerned friends, sympathetic acquaintances, and even a few nosy busybodies from Ethan's extensive social circle, eager for gossip. With each jarring notification, Olivia felt like she was being violently dragged back into that humiliating, soul-destroying moment at the mansion. She ignored most of the calls, letting them go straight to voicemail, though she eventually mustered the courage to speak with her younger sister. Jessica, typically soft-spoken but fiercely protective of Olivia, offered constant, unwavering support. "We'll get through this, Olivia," Jessica promised fervently over the phone, her voice filled with conviction. "You are strong, so much stronger than you realize right now. And you have the baby to think about. Don't you dare let that scumbag's despicable actions define your future or your worth." Despite the encouraging words from her sister and a few close friends, Olivia found even the simplest tasks daunting, almost insurmountable. She had trouble eating, her appetite completely stifled by the heavy lump of heartbreak lodged persistently in her throat. Sleep offered little respite, as vivid nightmares of Ethan and Chloe's triumphant public display jolted her awake each night, leaving her trembling and drenched in cold sweat. Worst of all, her already turbulent emotions were magnified tenfold by the fluctuating hormones of her advanced pregnancy, creating a relentless, swirling internal storm of profound sadness, consuming anger, sharp betrayal, and paralyzing fear for the uncertain future. Amid the swirl of despair, the official paperwork arrived with brutal efficiency. Divorce documents, delivered by courier in a crisp, impersonal envelope bearing Ethan's high-powered attorney's letterhead. The stark finality of it made Olivia's hand shake uncontrollably as she opened the package. Ethan was moving swiftly, clearly eager to dissolve their marriage and divide their assets with the cold, calculated precision of a business deal. Enclosed within the legal jargon was a settlement offer, a monthly stipend, modest considering his family's wealth, payable until such time as their child reached adulthood. It was a calculated sum that reeked offensively of hush money. The subtext was chillingly clear: take the settlement, sign the papers, and disappear quietly from his life, causing no further trouble or embarrassment. Olivia bristled fiercely at the very notion of letting him by her silence. Her complicity, yet practical, terrifying concerns weighed heavily on her mind. She needed financial stability, especially now that she was carrying a child alone. Her job, a humble administrative position at a local nonprofit organization, provided a steady but modest income, barely enough to cover her own expenses, let alone the significant cost of raising a child alone in expensive San Diego. For a few agonizing days, she wavered, deeply tempted to just sign the papers, take the money, and ensure her baby's future was financially secure, regardless of the injustice. But each time she picked up a pen, hovering over the dotted line, she vividly remembered that humiliating, degrading moment when Ethan proposed to Chloe right in front of her. The triumphant smirk on Chloe's face. She remembered the protective flutter of the baby in her womb, as if her unborn child was silently urging her, empowering her to stand strong, to fight back. Olivia resolutely set the paperwork aside, deciding firmly she would consult a lawyer before signing anything. During that turbulent, emotionally raw period, she received a surprising invitation, a phone call from none other than Evelyn, Ethan's mother. Though Olivia initially hesitated, feeling wary and assuming Evelyn would naturally take her son's side, she eventually agreed to meet for coffee, sensing a glimmer of genuine compassion, perhaps even remorse, in the older woman's voice during their brief conversation. They arranged to meet at a quiet, upscale cafe in downtown San Diego. Upon arriving, Olivia noted that Evelyn looked strained, tired, and somehow older than she remembered. Her expensive jewelry and perfectly coiffed hair did little to hide the deep distress etched clearly across her usually composed face. "Olivia," Evelyn said softly, her voice thick with emotion as she reached across the small table to squeeze Olivia's hand gently. "I am so deeply sorry for what Ethan has done, for the public humiliation, for the cruelty. I never raised him to behave this way. It's inexcusable." Tears glistened unexpectedly in Evelyn's eyes, and Olivia felt her own well up instantly in response. A shared moment of female solidarity against male betrayal. "I want you to know," Evelyn continued earnestly, "that you will always be family to me, regardless of what happens between you and Ethan. And I am here for you, truly, if you need anything at all." Despite her own profound pain and lingering suspicion, Olivia was genuinely touched by the unexpected gesture. She didn't know how entirely genuine it was. Perhaps Evelyn was indeed attempting damage control for the family's tarnished reputation. Still, she felt a flicker of immense relief that at least someone from Ethan's world acknowledged the blatant cruelty she had endured. "Thank you, Evelyn," Olivia whispered, her voice hoarse. "I appreciate your kindness more than you know, even though I'm not sure where we all stand now. I don't want to cause any more problems between you and Ethan." Evelyn nodded solemnly, understandingly. "I understand completely. But please, promise me you'll keep me informed about the baby. I want to be a part of my grandchild's life. Olivia, no matter what happens." And, she added, lowering her voice conspiratorially, "if you need a good attorney, I can recommend an excellent one who isn't tied to our family in any way. Someone sharp, someone who will fiercely protect your interests." The brief, Emotional meeting ended with a surprisingly warm hug, and Evelyn discreetly slipped Olivia a folded business card bearing the name of a reputable, highly recommended female divorce lawyer. Olivia walked away from the cafe with decidedly mixed feelings. On one hand, she felt some solace, some validation, in Evelyn's unexpected support. On the other, she couldn't entirely shake the nagging question, why hadn't Evelyn, or Robert for that matter, intervened sooner? Had they known about the affair all along? Returning to the echoing emptiness of her large, luxurious house, a house that no longer felt like home, Olivia took a long, hard look at herself in the full-length mirror in the hallway. Her reflection showed tear-stained cheeks, dark, shadowed circles under her eyes from sleepless nights, and the gentle, undeniable curve of her pregnant belly beneath her maternity top. In that quiet, solitary moment, she made a silent, fierce decision. She would not allow the humiliation, the betrayal, the heartbreak to define her or her unborn child's life. Though the path ahead looked daunting, arduous, and lonely, she clung fiercely to the burgeoning determination to emerge from this devastating ordeal stronger, more resilient, and entirely independent. She picked up her phone, deliberately scrolling past the dozens of gossip-laden voicemails and sympathetic but ultimately unhelpful text messages until she found the number on the attorney's business card Evelyn had given her. Taking a deep, steadying breath, she dialed, mentally preparing herself for a new kind of battle, a legal one. Fought not for revenge, but for her future, and for the future of her precious child. She would fight, and perhaps, in time, she might even find a way to transform this devastation, this shattering pain, into an unexpected source of profound strength and resilience. Olivia's first meeting with attorney Margaret Davis marked a pivotal turning point in her fight for independence and justice. Evelyn Reed was a sharp-tongued, impeccably dressed woman in her late 50s, with intelligent salt-and-pepper hair pulled back severely and piercing blue eyes that conveyed both formidable intelligence and surprising empathy. Dressed in a no-nonsense black blazer and crisp white shirt, she exuded an air of quiet competence that immediately put Olivia at ease. A sense of profound relief began to settle in Olivia's chest as they sat across from each other at a polished conference table, discussing the complex, painful details of the divorce case. What Ethan did, Attorney Davis stated calmly, her voice firm but measured as she meticulously paged through the divorce documents and settlement offer Olivia had brought, is not just emotionally devastating. Olivia, it's legally reprehensible. Publicly proposing to someone else while still legally married. Even if California's no-fault divorce laws aren't as punitive regarding infidelity as in some other states, his blatant actions still paint a very compelling picture of his wrongdoing, his disregard for the marriage, and his cruelty towards you. And that, she added, looking up and meeting Olivia's gaze directly, can definitely work to our advantage during negotiations and, if necessary, in court. A tiny, fragile spark of hope ignited within Olivia. She had dreaded the prospect of an uphill, expensive legal battle, vividly imagining Ethan's team of high-priced corporate lawyers attempting to steamroll her into submission. But Attorney Davis's calm confidence, her clear grasp of the situation, gave Olivia a much-needed infusion of courage. Over the course of the next hour, they carefully mapped out a comprehensive legal strategy. This included fighting vigorously for fair and substantial child support based on Ethan's true earning potential, not just his current diminished state. Establishing clear and favorable custody arrangements that prioritize the baby's well-being, and potentially even seeking additional compensation for the significant emotional distress Ethan's public actions had inflicted upon her during her pregnancy. Attorney Davis made it unequivocally clear that Olivia's initial reluctance to sign Ethan's insulting hush-money settlement offer was an incredibly wise decision. Accepting it hastily without proper legal counsel and negotiation might have irrevocably locked her into a far less favorable long-term financial position. Beyond the daunting legal realm, Olivia began to focus intently on rebuilding her emotional and financial stability. She realized with stark clarity that her current job at the nonprofit, while personally rewarding, might not provide enough income to sustainably support herself and her child in the long run, especially in the expensive San Diego area. Swallowing her pride, she meticulously updated her resume, highlighting skills she hadn't utilized in years, and began the arduous process of applying for positions at larger organizations, hoping desperately to find a role that offered better benefits, a more substantial salary, and perhaps opportunities for future advancement. Each click of the Submit application button felt like throwing a fragile lifeline out into the vast, uncertain unknown. The job search process inevitably bruised her already fragile confidence. She was frequently ghosted by companies after initial interviews, passed over for positions without explanation, and sat through countless interviews trying valiantly to mask her deep exhaustion, her grief, and the visible weight of her advancing pregnancy. She sent out dozens upon dozens of applications, attended interviews that sometimes felt promising but ultimately went nowhere, and somehow managed to juggle debilitating bouts of morning sickness in between virtual meetings and follow-up emails. During this challenging, often discouraging phase, she sought constant refuge in her sister Jessica's unwavering support. Jessica often came over to Olivia's temporarily rented apartment after work, cooking batches of healthy meals to stock her freezer, ensuring Olivia was getting the right nutrition for the pregnancy, even when she felt too overwhelmed to cook for herself. Jessica also accompanied Olivia faithfully to her doctor's appointments at Seaside Medical Center, where Olivia felt a surge of profound reassurance and love each time she heard her baby's strong, steady heartbeat on the ultrasound monitor. She discovered small, unexpected moments of pure joy amidst the chaos, like finding out during the anatomy scan that she was expecting a little girl. That precious milestone brought fresh tears to her eyes, tears not of sadness this time, but of profound gratitude and anticipation, reminding her powerfully that even in the midst of profound darkness, there was a precious, undeniable ray of light growing within her. As her belly grew larger each week, so did her quiet resolve. She confided in a close friend from college, Megan, who now worked at a rapidly growing startup tech company headquartered in San Diego. Through this crucial connection, Olivia landed an interview for an administrative manager position. The job represented a significant step up from her previous role, offering not only a higher salary, but also a potentially flexible schedule and robust maternity benefits, exactly what she needed. The interviewer, the VP of Operations, was refreshingly frank about the challenges inherent in the role: tight deadlines, constant multitasking between different departments, managing competing priorities. But Olivia, hungry for a chance to prove herself and build a secure future, embraced the possibility of forging this new professional path. She left the interview feeling cautiously optimistic, hopeful for the first time in months. Within a week, the company extended a formal job offer. Olivia accepted immediately, her heart pounding with a mixture of profound excitement and overwhelming relief. Although the anxiety about starting a demanding new job while heavily pregnant still loomed large, she sensed deep down that forging ahead decisively was her only viable option. On her first day, she was relieved to discover a surprisingly supportive and understanding work culture. Her direct boss, a working mother of 2 young children herself, expressed empathy for Olivia's situation, and even proactively provided her with company resources on balancing pregnancy and parental leave with a demanding workload. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings began in earnest, moving forward with legal precision. Attorney Davis filed the necessary papers, citing Ethan's blatant extramarital affair and extreme cruelty as contributing factors to the marriage's breakdown. As expected, Ethan's attorneys responded with predictable bluster and outright denial, attempting to shift the blame entirely onto Olivia for allegedly failing to maintain the marital relationship. They argued brazenly that she had become emotionally distant and unreasonably uncompromising, attempting to paint Ethan as the tragic victim of a cold, loveless marriage who had simply sought solace elsewhere. In these tense legal skirmishes, conducted primarily through sharply worded letters and filings, Olivia felt her righteous anger well up repeatedly. But each time she reviewed a misleading statement or outright lie presented by Ethan's side, she consciously channeled that white-hot fury into renewed motivation to fight harder, to document everything meticulously, and absolutely not to back down or be intimidated. Every single day felt like a precarious balancing act, juggling the demands of her challenging new job, attending frequent prenatal checkups, and mentally steeling herself for the emotionally draining, unrelenting divorce battle. But despite the immense challenges, the exhaustion, the lingering heartbreak, Olivia felt an ember of undeniable strength beginning to glow steadily within her heart. With each passing week, she noticed a subtle but significant shift in her overall mindset. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was actively, intentionally laying the groundwork for a powerful comeback, building a new life on her own terms. In the background, word of Ethan's shocking public betrayal and abrupt engagement to Chloe Vance traveled swiftly, like wildfire, through San Diego's interconnected, often gossipy social circles. Some of Ethan's old friends, particularly those who had also liked Olivia, quietly reached out to her via text or email, expressing sympathy and offering vague support. Others, predictably, distanced themselves entirely from the messy drama, clearly wanting to remain neutral or avoid picking sides. Olivia learned quickly to filter her social media accounts, blocking negativity and focusing solely on the genuine, constructive support offered by her true friends and family. Through it all, she consciously resisted the powerful urge to lash out publicly, to expose Ethan's lies and cruelty for all to see. She trusted, perhaps naively, that her best, most effective response would be simply living well, focusing on her health and her baby, and securing a stable, independent future for her soon-to-be-born child. One late evening, after a particularly grueling day at her new job, Olivia sank wearily onto her comfortable couch, phone in hand, scrolling mindlessly through work emails and unanswered messages from acquaintances offering unsolicited advice. She then stumbled upon an online ad for a prenatal yoga class being offered at a nearby studio. Impulsively, needing some form of self-care, she signed up, thinking it might help her cope with the overwhelming stress and anxiety she felt constantly. The first session felt awkward, slightly intimidating. She was surrounded by serene, glowing pregnant women who all seemed relaxed, happy, and at peace with their changing bodies. Yet, as she moved through the gentle poses, focusing intently on her breath, connecting with the miracle of life growing inside her, a profound sense of calm she hadn't felt in months began to wash over her, soothing her frayed nerves. Olivia left that yoga studio feeling not just physically looser, more flexible, but mentally unburdened. Lighter somehow. She had discovered a healthy, positive outlet for her anxiety, a quiet sanctuary where she could reconnect with her body, her emotions, and the deep wellspring of strength she was slowly rediscovering within herself. That evening, she pulled out a journal she hadn't touched since before the wedding and wrote passionately about her aspirations for herself and for her unborn daughter. She wrote about building a life filled with dignity, integrity, love, and unwavering resilience, a life entirely free from the long, dark shadows Ethan's actions had cast over her. Step by painstaking step, Olivia was forging her path forward, although the sharp sting of betrayal still ached deep within her. And the humiliating memories of that night at the estate still haunted her dreams occasionally. She refused utterly to be defined by the hurt inflicted upon her. She chose, consciously and deliberately, to be defined instead by her growing determination, her expanding professional skill set, her nurturing circle of truly supportive friends and family, and the immense, overwhelming love she already felt for the precious child she carried, her daughter, her future, her reason to rise. Little did she know then that fate still had a few more unexpected twists in store for them, all twists that would ultimately lead her to an unforeseen, quiet triumph, where the relentless wheel of karma would finally spin decisively, satisfyingly, in her favor. Ethan and Chloe wasted absolutely no time flaunting their whirlwind romance. Glossy pictures of lavish dinners at exclusive restaurants, spontaneous weekend getaways to exotic locales on private jets, and, of course, Chloe's enormous, sparkling engagement ring appeared with relentless frequency on their social media feeds. Publicly, they projected the image of a glamorous, unstoppable power couple destined for boundless success and happiness. Privately, however, behind the carefully curated facade, a far different, far messier story was rapidly unfolding. Robert, Ethan's pragmatic and reputation-conscious father, simply couldn't ignore the scandalous fallout that erupted after Ethan publicly proposed to Chloe while still married to Olivia. Though privately furious with his son's reckless behavior, Robert kept most of his criticism behind the closed doors of the family boardroom, hoping desperately to protect the family's hard-earned business reputation from further damage. Chloe, meanwhile, aimed to capitalize immediately on her newly acquired status as the future Mrs. Thorne. She began aggressively pushing for bold, expensive marketing moves at the family's chain of car dealerships. She proposed glitzy, celebrity-endorsed ad campaigns, suggested extravagant dealership renovations, and even hinted strongly at opening a new flagship luxury showroom in a prime, high-rent location. Robert, ever the cautious businessman, listened politely to her ambitious pitches but remained deeply skeptical of her extravagant, often impractical ideas, questioning the potential return on such massive investments. Chloe's relentless drive for instant prestige and visible success quickly collided head-on with the established financial realities of the business. She demanded massive budgets for her initiatives, often without detailed justification, while Robert, wary of hemorrhaging funds unnecessarily, insisted on thorough vetting and measurable results. Despite this growing friction, Ethan found himself caught in the middle, desperately trying to appease his demanding fiancée while simultaneously placating his increasingly concerned father. He granted as many of Chloe's requests as he possibly could, often overriding his father's objections, hoping foolishly to prove to everyone and perhaps to himself that leaving Olivia for Chloe had been the right decision, a sign of his strength and decisiveness, not a catastrophic mistake. At first, Chloe seemed pleased, even triumphant. She boasted openly to friends and colleagues about completely rebranding the company, confident that her magic touch would swiftly transform the established dealership chain into an undisputed industry leader, eclipsing all competitors. However, the more she demanded, the more palpable the tension grew between Ethan and his father. Robert saw costs spiraling rapidly upwards with few, if any, tangible returns on the investment. During tense board meetings, he openly questioned Chloe's strategic plans, warning Ethan repeatedly that her reckless spending could severely damage not only their bottom line, but also their long-standing investor confidence. Feeling increasingly cornered and defensive, Ethan found himself defending Chloe vehemently in public while privately, desperately pleading with her to scale back her demands, to be more fiscally responsible. At home, in a luxurious condo they now shared, their carefully constructed facade of perfect romance began to crack under the strain. Chloe frequently criticized Ethan whenever his long work hours kept him away from her side, conveniently forgetting his previous pattern with Olivia. She accused him angrily of valuing the business over her happiness, demanding ever more lavish gifts and constant, effusive reassurance of his love and commitment. Heated, ugly arguments began to replace the initial honeymoon phase. Ethan, unaccustomed to such relentless conflict and lacking Olivia's previous calming influence, grew increasingly stressed, anxious, and irritable. He struggled mightily to maintain even a semblance of peace in their turbulent relationship. Meanwhile, insidious rumors continued to circulate like poison through San Diego's interconnected high society circles. Whispers suggested that the ambitious Chloe Vance might be cynically using the wealthy, malleable Ethan purely as a stepping stone for her own career ambitions. Some speculated openly that her grand vision for the dealership's future was merely a convenient cover for personal greed and extravagance. Others whispered pityingly that the foolish Ethan had rushed blindly into the relationship, driven solely by wounded pride and a desire to spite Olivia, without truly knowing the woman he was now engaged to marry. One particularly vicious anonymous post on a popular local gossip blog even cuttingly referred to Chloe as San Diego's next calculated Cinderella, implying her motives were purely mercenary. Still, neither Ethan nor Chloe would publicly admit to any fault or wrongdoing, determined to validate their public image and silence the critics. They dove headlong, almost frantically, into planning an ostentatious, over-the-top wedding. Costs soared astronomically as Chloe insisted on custom-designed couture attire. Elaborate, imported floral arrangements costing tens of thousands, and hiring high-profile celebrity entertainment for the reception. The more critical the rumors became, the more lavish and exorbitant the wedding plans grew, as if the sheer scale and expense of their nuptials could somehow silence the pervasive public doubt and whispers about their relationship's authenticity behind their glamorous, smiling Instagram posts. However, the private quarrels escalated in frequency and intensity. Robert Thorne demanded complete financial transparency regarding the wedding expenses, while key investors grew increasingly concerned about the seemingly frivolous expenditures impacting the company's stability. Alarmed board members began requesting itemized budgets for Chloe's marketing projects, and damaging internal emails regarding questionable spending started leaking anonymously to the local press. Under immense pressure from all sides as father, the board, the media, and Chloe herself, Ethan felt increasingly trapped, suffocated. The glamorous, powerful lifestyle he thought he desperately wanted had somehow morphed into a relentless, exhausting scramble for damage control and crisis management. Unbeknownst to them both, these visible cracks in their seemingly perfect public image were only the beginning of their downfall. In relentlessly chasing external validation and deliberately ignoring the deep, underlying strife in their relationship and business dealings, they inadvertently set the stage for a collapse even more public, more humiliating than their shocking engagement spectacle had been. By the time Olivia neared her due date, feeling physically uncomfortable but emotionally stronger than she had in months. A perfect storm of problems had begun to converge catastrophically on Ethan and Chloe's meticulously crafted kingdom of lies and entitlement. It started with the final report from the internal audit of the family dealerships, initiated weeks earlier by a deeply suspicious Robert Thorne. As he had feared, the auditors uncovered rampant, systemic overspending within the new marketing budgets, far exceeding the company's typical allocations and protocols. Inflated invoices from unfamiliar vendors, numerous unexplained high-dollar purchases, and highly questionable consulting contracts pointed directly, undeniably, to Chloe Vance's newly established marketing department. In several flagrant cases, substantial company funds had clearly been diverted to purely personal expenses, luxury international travel disguised as market research, exorbitant high-end fashion purchases classified as brand development, and lavish dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants documented as client engagement, despite having little or nothing to do with actual business campaigns. One particularly egregious vendor invoice listed a week-long stay in a Paris Fashion Week hotel suite, complete with spa treatments, as a client engagement space. Another documented a $12,000 payment for brand awareness development through luxury gifting, with no receipts or recipient lists attached. When confronted directly by Robert and the auditors with this mountain of damning evidence, Chloe attempted to play innocent, feigning confusion and outrage. She initially blamed unfortunate miscommunications with vendors and simple clerical errors made by her inexperienced staff for the glaring discrepancies. But the mounting, irrefutable evidence overwhelmingly suggested a deliberate, systematic misuse of company funds for personal enrichment. Robert Thorne was predictably furious. "My son may be temporarily blind, Chloe, but I assure you, I am not," he snarled during a tense, closed-door meeting with Ethan and Chloe present. "This is my family's legacy you're playing with, our reputation, and I will not stand by and let it be destroyed by your selfish, greedy whims." Ethan, torn painfully between his misguided loyalty to defending his fiancée and his desperate need to save face with his powerful father, tried weakly to argue that it was all just a series of unfortunate misunderstandings, easily rectified. But Robert, his patience finally exhausted, wasn't swayed in the slightest. The company's legal counsel advised sternly that Chloe's reckless conduct put the entire corporation in a legally precarious position. The business risked losing essential credibility with investors and lenders if word got out that the future intended head of the dealership chain was entangled in such significant financial fiascos. Then came the bizarre break-in scandal. Late one night, a brand new, top-of-the-line luxury sedan disappeared without a trace from the main showroom floor of one of the dealerships. Security footage initially revealed a shadowy, suspicious figure expertly tampering with the locks and disabling the alarm system. At first, Ethan assumed it was just a random, albeit costly, professional theft until further review of the exterior camera footage showed the thief handing the stolen vehicle off just blocks away to an unidentified accomplice driving a familiar-looking SUV. This accomplice then drove the stolen car straight to a private, high-security storage lot where, investigation later revealed, Chloe Vance's name was listed on the lease contract for a reserved space. The shocking news rattled everyone involved, though the specific details remained murky. Rampant speculation soared about whether Chloe herself had somehow orchestrated the theft, perhaps for personal financial gain or as part of some convoluted insurance fraud scheme. The police launched a formal investigation, and while Chloe wasn't officially charged due to lack of direct evidence tying her to the thief, the entire fiasco added another thick layer of reputational damage to the already tarnished Thorne brand. Investors grew increasingly skittish, demanding answers and reassurance. Meanwhile, the extravagant wedding plans dissolved rapidly into utter chaos. Key vendors, the caterer, the florist, the high-priced band began demanding hefty overdue deposits and final payments up front. The celebrity event planner threatened loudly to cancel the entire affair if she didn't receive her substantial overdue fees immediately. In a frantic, desperate scramble to save face and keep the wedding on track, Ethan emptied his personal savings accounts and even recklessly tried to dip into restricted business reserve funds. When Robert discovered this unauthorized withdrawal attempt, he immediately locked down all company funds, cutting off Ethan's access completely. Furious, shouting arguments between father and son ensued, culminating in Robert threatening unequivocally to cut Ethan out of the business and the family inheritance altogether if he couldn't immediately rein in his fiancée and her destructive spending. For Chloe, the deep cracks in Ethan's carefully constructed facade of endless, accessible wealth had finally become glaringly visible, shattering her illusions. She lashed out at him viciously, accusing him bitterly of fundamentally misrepresenting his financial stability and independence from his father. "You made me believe I'd have everything, the lifestyle, the status, the freedom," she screamed during a particularly heated argument overheard by several stunned staff members at the dealership's main corporate office. "How dare you embarrass me like this? I'm supposed to be your future wife, the next queen of this empire, not some penny-pinching girlfriend begging for scraps." Ethan, who had never been adept at managing conflict constructively, especially without Olivia's former calming, rational influence, finally lost his temper completely as well. He spewed his own venomous accusations, blaming Chloe entirely for her insatiable greed, her unrealistic expectations, and for making impractical, ego-driven business decisions that now threatened the entire family empire his grandfather had built from scratch. Their once passionate romance devolved into routine. Bitter fights. The once luxurious condo, intended as their love nest, filled instead with the ugly sounds of shouting matches, slammed doors, and broken possessions. In a matter of mere months, their highly publicized dream life had completely devolved into a nightmarish, exhausting power struggle fueled by resentment and disappointment. Then, in a final, almost perfectly scripted twist of poetic justice, Chloe herself was caught red-handed in a compromising situation. An incriminating series of saved text messages between her and another man rumored to be a wealthy venture capitalist she'd been aggressively courting for potential new marketing contracts was discovered accidentally by Ethan. He had innocently picked up her phone, left charging on the kitchen counter, intending to read a text notification he thought was from a wedding vendor. The screen had lit up as he touched it, displaying recent message threads. The top thread wasn't from a vendor. It was labeled only with a suggestive heart emoji. Curious, and perhaps already suspicious, Ethan tapped on it. What he found instead sent a jolt of cold fury through him. Blatantly flirtatious exchanges, coded references to secret meetings and hotel rendezvous, and clear insinuations from Chloe that she was actively exploring her options and entirely open to leaving Ethan if the right, more lucrative opportunities presented themselves. Ethan's world finally, completely crashed down around him. Blinding rage and a sickening sense of profound betrayal flooded his senses. He confronted Chloe immediately, waving the phone furiously in her face. All this damn time, I trusted you," he roared, his voice shaking with fury. "I defied my entire family for you. I cast aside my own wife, my pregnant wife. And for what? So you could be secretly setting up your next conquest behind my back." Chloe merely scoffed, rolling her eyes with practiced indifference. "Oh, don't be so naive." Ethan, She drawled contemptuously. Perhaps I wouldn't have to look elsewhere if you'd actually kept your promises. If you truly controlled the purse strings you pretended to. I'm certainly not going to be tied down to a sinking ship. Her voice was ice cold, utterly unrepentant. She didn't even flinch when he slammed her phone down violently onto the expensive marble countertop. Her eyes, when they met his, gleamed not with guilt or remorse, but with something far worse, pure, unadulterated disdain. A violent, ugly argument ensued, escalating quickly, culminating in Chloe defiantly storming out of the condo, hastily packing her designer suitcases and leaving him standing amidst the wreckage of their sham relationship. The wedding was officially, irrevocably off. Furious and deeply humiliated, Ethan immediately demanded she repay every single cent she'd recklessly siphoned from the dealership's budgets. But Chloe just laughed coldly in his face, callously threatening to take him down with her, exposing his own questionable business practices if he dared to go public with accusations of embezzlement against her. You think I don't know where the real skeletons are buried in your family's closets? Ethan? She hissed menacingly, before slamming the condo door shut behind her for the last time. The chilling standoff left him shaken, paralyzed, uncertain how to proceed without risking further scandal and potentially implicating himself. Broken, publicly humiliated, financially depleted, and utterly alone, Ethan found himself standing silently in the echoing luxury condo that now felt more like a cold, empty tomb of shattered illusions than a home. His father's stark threats to disown him loomed large and terrifyingly real. The vast business empire he had once arrogantly believed he would effortlessly inherit without question was now resting on precarious footing, its future uncertain, all because he had foolishly allowed his unchecked arrogance, his wounded pride, and his base lust to dictate his life choices, abandoning loyalty and integrity along the way. In the crushing emptiness of that condo, surrounded by the expensive trappings of a life he no longer possessed, he finally, truly understood the staggering depth of his betrayal toward Olivia. He recalled with painful clarity the night he had publicly proposed to Chloe right in front of his pregnant wife. The look of utter devastation on Olivia's gentle face, and the innocent, unborn child he had dismissed so callously, so cruelly. Ethan realized with sickening, gut-wrenching clarity that he had well and truly lost everything that mattered: his reputation, his father's trust, his fiancée, his financial security, and, most tragically, the only woman who had ever genuinely, selflessly cared for him. The glittering house of cards he had so arrogantly built with Chloe had collapsed spectacularly around him, and he was left standing alone amid the wreckage, finally awaiting the final, inevitable toll of karma's bell. As fate, or perhaps poetic justice, would have it, the final stroke of karma for Ethan arrived at precisely the same time Olivia welcomed new life into the world. After a long and challenging labor, she gave birth to a beautiful, healthy baby girl she named Grace, a name chosen specifically for its profound meaning, symbolizing purity, resilience, and the possibility of renewal after a long, dark night of the soul. The labor was intense, spanning almost 18 exhausting hours. But Olivia endured each powerful contraction with a fierce, quiet resolve she hadn't known she possessed. By her side throughout the entire ordeal, her sister Jessica offered unwavering support, holding her hand tightly, wiping her forehead with cool cloths, and whispering constant words of encouragement. When baby Grace finally let out her first healthy, lusty cry, Olivia burst into tears not of pain this time, but of profound gratitude, overwhelming relief, and an all-consuming love unlike anything she had ever experienced before. In the peaceful days following Grace's birth, Olivia felt a deep sense of contentment and quiet fulfillment settle over her, a feeling she had not known in a very long time. She brought her tiny daughter home from the hospital to a modest but comfortable two-bedroom apartment she had recently rented in a family-friendly neighborhood closer to her new workplace. The space wasn't fancy or luxurious by any stretch of the imagination. Certainly nothing like the opulent house she had shared with Ethan. But it was hers and Grace's, and it felt safe, warm, and genuinely like home. A few colleagues from her supportive tech startup job visited over the next few weeks, showering them with thoughtful gifts, diapers, adorable baby clothes, handmade blankets, and even a large, crowdsourced hamper overflowing with practical essentials. For the first time since her marriage had spectacularly fallen apart months earlier, Olivia could finally see a future brimming not with fear and uncertainty, but with genuine hope and real possibilities. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings finally reached their concluding stage, thanks to Attorney Davis's meticulous legal strategy, sharp negotiation skills, combined with Ethan's very public, undeniable affair and its disastrous, well-documented aftermath. Olivia clearly held the upper hand. Ethan's attorneys attempted one last round of desperate intimidation tactics, trying to question Olivia's fitness as a single parent and implying she was financially unstable despite her new, well-paying job. But Attorney Davis skillfully dismantled each flimsy argument with concrete evidence of Olivia's stable employment, responsible financial planning, and a healthy, nurturing living environment she had created for Grace. Additionally, the family court judge presiding over the case took into significant account the documented emotional distress and the profoundly humiliating circumstances surrounding Ethan's public proposal, which had occurred while Olivia was significantly pregnant. By the time the final divorce judgment was issued, Olivia was granted full primary physical and legal custody of Grace, with Ethan mandated to provide substantial monthly child support, significantly more than his initial insulting offer. Word eventually reached Olivia, through mutual acquaintances and industry gossip, that Ethan's personal finances were now in dire straits. His father, Robert, had followed through on his threat and frozen Ethan's access to certain family trust funds, forcing Ethan to rely solely on a drastically reduced salary from the dealership, where he was now reportedly relegated to a minor managerial role, and whatever meager personal savings he had left after the disastrous wedding planning fiasco with Chloe. He had been forced to move out of the opulent condo and was apparently living alone in a much smaller, nondescript apartment near one of the suburban dealerships. Chloe Vance was long gone, vanished from the San Diego social scene entirely. Rumors suggested she had left the state, possibly even the country, likely to avoid any potential legal fallout from the embezzlement allegations swirling around her departure. Some whispered that the wealthy venture capitalist she'd been flirting with had also abruptly cut ties upon hearing of the scandals, leaving her with nowhere soft to land. One quiet afternoon, a few weeks after finalizing the divorce and settling into her new routine as a working single mother, Olivia was peacefully cradling a sleeping Grace in her arms when she heard a timid, hesitant knock at her apartment door. Peeking cautiously through the peephole, she was stunned, her breath catching in her throat, to see Ethan standing there on her doorstep. He looked disheveled, smaller somehow, his expensive clothes rumpled, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Even though her pulse spiked instantly with a familiar mixture of residual anger and deep weariness, she slowly opened the door a few inches, keeping the chain latch securely in place. "What are you doing here, Ethan?" she asked, her voice calm but firm, devoid of accusation but also lacking any warmth. Ethan exhaled slowly, looking frail and utterly defeated, as if the weight of the entire world rested heavily upon his shoulders. I came to see my daughter," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. And to talk to you, Olivia, if you let me. Olivia hesitated. Legally, he had supervised visitation rights, although they were structured through a formal schedule managed by their lawyers. Her first instinct was to slam the door shut in his face, to protect herself and her daughter from any further pain he might inflict. But a small, conflicted part of her remembered that Grace might someday want, or need, to know her father, regardless of his past actions. And so, after a long moment of internal deliberation, Olivia slowly unlatched the chain and opened the door wider, allowing him to step inside. The man who stepped tentatively into her small, sunlit living room bore little resemblance to the arrogant, entitled husband who had so cruelly humiliated her months before. His once confident, swaggering air was completely gone, replaced by a hollow, palpable sadness. He looked around slowly at the neatly organized space, the simple, comfortable furniture, the brightly colored baby toys scattered on a soft rug, the warm sunlight streaming cheerfully through the clean curtains. It was a world away from the cold, sterile luxury he had once inhabited. When he finally turned his gaze to the sleeping baby nestled peacefully in Olivia's arms, tears glistened unmistakably in his eyes. She's beautiful," he whispered hoarsely, taking a seat hesitantly on the edge of the armchair when Olivia gestured silently for him to do so. He waited, his hands clasped tightly in his lap, as if unsure whether Olivia would even allow him to hold his own daughter. After a few tense, silent seconds, Olivia carefully, reluctantly, handed Grace over, her protective maternal instincts on high alert, watching his every move. Ethan cradled his tiny daughter gingerly, almost awkwardly, fresh tears slipping unheeded down his cheeks as he stared down at her perfect, miniature features. "I'm sorry, Olivia," he finally choked out, looking up at her, his eyes filled with a raw regret she hadn't thought him capable of feeling. "I am so sorry. For everything. For how I treated you. For humiliating you like that. For not being there during the pregnancy. For being a fool." Olivia stood at a slight distance, her arms folded protectively across her chest. A part of her, the part that still carried the ghost of the love she once felt, had perhaps dreamed of this moment of Ethan finally coming to his senses, realizing the gravity of his actions, and offering a sincere apology. But actually hearing the words now felt strangely surreal, almost anticlimactic. The damage was done, the trust irrevocably shattered. "I can't change what happened, Ethan," she said softly, her voice steady, without wavering. "And neither can you. Grace is my priority now. My only priority." Ethan nodded slowly, his expression a painful mixture of profound regret and weary acceptance. He asked tentatively if there was any chance, any possibility at all, that they could somehow work things out, maybe even start over. Try again. Olivia felt a fresh surge of residual heartbreak, quickly followed by a clarifying wave of righteous anger. "We are far beyond that point, Ethan," she replied firmly, her voice gaining strength. "The divorce is finalized. It's over between us. You have responsibilities now as Grace's father, and I truly hope, for her sake, that you'll choose to honor them consistently. But as for us," she stated unequivocally, leaving no room for doubt, "there is absolutely no going back. Ever." He didn't argue this time. Perhaps he was too broken, too depleted, to fight anymore. He simply held Grace a moment longer, his gaze filled with a sadness that tugged unexpectedly at Olivia's heart. Then gently, carefully handed her back, as if relinquishing something precious and lost. Before leaving, Julian asked quietly if he could visit again soon, promising to follow the proper visitation schedule arranged by the lawyers. Olivia nodded curtly, offering him a short but polite goodbye, closing the door firmly behind him. After he left, she stood by the window for a long time, holding Grace close, breathing in her sweet baby scent. She peered down through the blinds to see Ethan trudging away down the sidewalk, shoulders hunched, his once vibrant swagger completely gone, looking utterly defeated and alone. The contrast between their two divergent paths couldn't have been more starkly illuminated in that moment. Olivia felt the pang of sorrow, not for the man who had hurt her so deeply, but perhaps for the father her child would barely know. Yet, alongside the sorrow, she also felt a quiet, profound sense of triumph, the triumph of having survived, of having rebuilt her life from the ashes without him, and the certainty that she would continue to do so, raising her daughter with love, strength, and integrity. In a sense, she had already won the only battle that truly mattered, the battle he had so viciously provoked that night at the estate. She had found new strength within herself, discovered a fierce, unconditional love in her beautiful daughter, and forged a new, hard-won confidence in her own abilities. And that, Olivia realized with peaceful certainty, was how she ultimately got the last laugh. Not by stooping to Ethan's level of cruelty or seeking petty revenge, but simply by living a life that radiated genuine hope, quiet dignity, and limitless possibility. The best revenge, if it could even be called that, lay not in his downfall, but in her own quiet peace of mind, her resilience, and the bright, promising future she was diligently carving out for herself and her daughter. She was thriving, raising Grace in a home filled with warmth, laughter, and authenticity, while Ethan faced the lonely wreckage of the empire he had almost inherited, stripped bare of the status and illusions that had once fueled his destructive arrogance. Indeed, karma, or perhaps just the natural consequences of one's actions, had played its hand decisively, and Olivia had emerged from the fire not unscathed, but undeniably stronger, holding the greatest gift of all, a beautiful baby girl and a life that was finally, truly, unequivocally her own. As the morning sun filtered warmly through the nursery curtains, gently touching baby Grace's sleeping cheek, Olivia leaned down and kissed her daughter's soft forehead, whispering softly, "This is our dawn, little one." Sometimes the universe writes the best plot twists of all. Ethan and Chloe try to feed their egos by stomping on someone else's life, only to end up trapped and diminished by their own lies and destructive choices. Olivia, on the other hand, faced her devastating heartbreak with quiet courage, rebuilt her life step by painstaking step, and ultimately discovered real, lasting happiness in motherhood and her newfound independence. By the time Ethan finally realized the true value of what he'd so carelessly thrown away, the door to reconciliation was firmly, permanently sealed shut. Dear friend, life certainly has a way of testing us, often when we least expect it. But as the Stoics wisely remind us, we often suffer more in imagination than in reality, because true strength lies not in avoiding pain altogether, but in our capacity to rise through it, to learn from it, and to grow stronger because of it. Olivia's story is a powerful testament to that quiet, formidable resilience, the kind that isn't loud or vengeful, but dignified, steady, and ultimately triumphant. She didn't wait for closure from those who hurt her. She created her own closure by choosing peace over bitterness, healing over hatred, and forward momentum over stagnation. Sometimes the sweetest, most profound justice isn't about seeing others fall, but simply about becoming the version of yourself they never thought you could be. May we all find the courage to rise after the breaking and walk forward with grace, dignity, and hope. If Olivia's story touched your heart or resonated with your own experiences. Please show your support by liking this video, sharing it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribing to our channel for more stories like this one: tales of resilience, hope, and the unexpected ways we find strength in the face of adversity. Your support truly helps us bring more inspiring stories like this to life. Thank you so much for watching.